The silent declaration. The crystalline dome of the Galactic Assembly stretched a kilometer into the violet skies of Centauri Prime, its transparent walls refracting starlight across the gathered representatives of over 3,000 civilizations. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, her simple dark blue uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate bioluminescent robes and chromatic scales of the alien delegates surrounding her. Distinguished members of the Assembly, she began, her voice carrying through the chamber's perfect acoustics. For the past century, humanity has contributed to this grand coalition. We've shared our innovations, traded our resources, and respected the established protocols. She paused, allowing her gaze to sweep across the tiered seats. Today, that changes. The translation matrix hovering above her head sparkled as it converted her words into the hundreds of languages used by the assembled species. Supreme Overseer Vakan, his iridescent tentacles rippling with concern, leaned forward on his elevated platform. Ambassador Chen, you have not been granted speaking rights for this session, he stated, multiple eyes narrowing. The agenda clearly states. The agenda, Chen interrupted, triggering gasps from several delegations, is precisely why I'm speaking now. Yesterday, your council rejected Earth's petition to establish independent research colonies in the Orion Arm. This marks the 1,001st time you've denied humanity's right to expand and innovate at our natural pace. A low murmur spread through the chamber as delegates consulted their neural interfaces, verifying her count. Chen continued before Vakan could respond. But this time, we're not here to appeal. We're here to inform you of our decision. She reached up and deactivated her universal translator, letting it float away. The symbolic gesture sent shockwaves through the assembly. No species had ever voluntarily severed the translation link during a formal session. In exactly 1 standard hour, she spoke in unaugmented English, knowing that at least a third of the delegates had learned human languages out of necessity. Every piece of human technology currently licensed to member worlds will begin a systematic shutdown. This includes quantum computation cores, terraforming systems, and yes, the translation matrix itself. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Arxer delegation's crystalline bodies chimed in alarm, while the hive mind of the Zivzevel collectively pulsed with electromagnetic distress signals. Vakan's tentacles turned a pale shade of green, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. You cannot do this, he thundered. The licensing agreements were written by us. Chen cut in, switching to flawless Centaurian, then to Arcturian, demonstrating why humans had become the galaxy's premier linguists. And they all contain Clause 7b, which allows for immediate termination in the event of systematic discrimination against the provider species. She began walking toward the chamber's massive doors, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent space. For too long, this assembly has treated humanity like children who need to be constrained, controlled, and corrected. You've forgotten that we advanced from stone tools to quantum computing in less than 10,000 years, while most of you took 50,000 just to achieve basic spaceflight. The doors slid open before her, their ancient mechanisms humming. We're not here to burn bridges, she said, turning one last time to face the assembly. We're here to rebuild them, as equals, not subordinates. When you're ready to accept that, Earth's channels will be open. As she stepped through the doorway, her neural implant connected with Earth's quantum network. Protocol Prometheus is a go, she subvocalized. Across the galaxy, human-made systems began displaying countdown timers, giving their alien users exactly 1 hour to save their data and prepare for a galaxy without human innovation. The assembly's doors sealed behind her with a resonant boom, leaving 3,000 species to contemplate a future they had never imagined. One where humanity didn't ask for permission to reach for the stars, but simply took its rightful place among them. In her private shuttle, Chen allowed herself a small smile as reports flooded in from human observers across the galaxy. The Zivzevel were already requesting emergency negotiations. The Arxer had begun powering down their quantum cores in hopes of preserving them. and the smaller species, those who had always supported humanity in quiet ways, were mobilizing their diplomatic corps. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their adaptability. It was their willingness to walk away from a bad deal and forge their own path. The next few weeks would reshape galactic society forever. And for once, humanity would be the ones setting the terms. The digital eclipse. The galactic trade hub of New Singapore hung in space like a massive geometric snowflake, its crystalline spires usually pulsing with the light of 1 million transactions per second. But today, those lights were dying one by one. In the hub's central operations center, Trade Master Zixtal watched in horror as system after system went dark. "Run the bypass sequence again." The insectoid administrator chittered to his technical team, their compound eyes reflecting the red warning holograms floating around them. A junior technician's antennae drooped as she responded. "It's no use, Master. The quantum cores aren't just locked. They're systematically disassembling their own code structure. The humans designed them to leave no trace when deactivated." Across the 100-kilometer span of the hub, merchants of every species were discovering just how deeply human technology had integrated into their daily operations. The Voidborn Banking Consortium found their predictive algorithms failing, centuries of carefully crafted trading advantages evaporating in seconds. The Hive Collective of the Third Quadrant watched helplessly as their inventory management systems crashed, leaving millions of drone workers without guidance. In her private office near the hub's apex, Executive Director Lanrai of the Galactic Commerce Authority slumped in her gravity couch, her bioluminescent patches glowing the deep blue of despair. The latest reports were catastrophic. 40% of all interstellar trade relied on human-designed quantum encryption. Without it, the risk of data piracy made large-scale commerce nearly impossible. "Director," her AI assistant spoke, its voice noticeably different, more mechanical, less fluid. The human-designed personality matrices were already degrading. "The consortium of minor species is requesting emergency authorization to negotiate directly with Earth." "Denied," Lanrai said automatically, then paused. The old protocols seemed meaningless now. On her primary screen, she watched the hub's master control system revert to its pre-human backup, the elegant holographic interface replaced by crude two-dimensional displays. The humans hadn't just built better technology. They'd made it essential, addictive. A priority communication cut through her thoughts. The sender, High Admiral Kex of the Galactic Defense Force. His scaled face appeared on her screen, the usual crystal-clear projection now grainy and unstable. "Director," he began without preamble, "we have a situation. 1/3 of our fleet is completely inoperable. The human-designed navigational cores aren't just offline. They've erased themselves. Another third is stuck in port, their quantum drives refusing to initialize." He leaned closer to the camera, his voice dropping. "And we just discovered that our primary weapon systems, the ones we thought were purely Arcturian technology, they were reverse-engineered from human designs. They're failing too." Lanrai felt her inner membranes contract with stress. "Surely our own technologies are centuries behind," Kex interrupted. "We became so dependent on human innovations that we stopped developing our own. The humans knew this would happen. They'd been planning this for years." In the lower levels of the hub, where independent traders and smaller merchant houses operated, a different story was unfolding. The nomad clans, who had always maintained their ancient navigational methods alongside human technology, found themselves flooded with transport requests. The tinker guilds of the Outer Rim, who had spent generations studying and learning from human engineering rather than simply using it, were suddenly the most sought-after experts in the galaxy. On level 42, in a quiet corner of the hub's residential sector, a group of young aliens from various species gathered in secret. They called themselves the Children of Earth, a movement that had grown among those who had studied human history and culture rather than just their technology. "They're showing us the way," said Kittel, a young Arcturian scholar, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement. The humans aren't just withdrawing their technology. They're teaching us a lesson about independence and self-reliance. The assembly thought they were containing a threat, added Mira, a subtle philosopher whose neural patterns pulsed with intensity. Instead, they were suppressing a catalyst for change. How many of our own species have grown stagnant, relying on borrowed innovation rather than developing our own? Back in the operations center, Trademaster Zixtal received a message that made his antennae twitch violently. The merchant princes of the Outer Rim, the wealthiest independent traders in the galaxy, were calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in the Assembly's economic leadership. They say, his assistant reported, mandibles clicking nervously, that any government that would risk the collapse of galactic commerce to maintain political control is unfit to govern. They're proposing direct negotiations with Earth to establish new trade protocols, without Assembly oversight. As the hub's backup systems struggled to maintain basic functions, Zixtal realized that humanity hadn't just created a technological crisis, they had engineered a revolution in galactic society itself. The question was no longer whether the old order would change, but how many institutions would fall before a new balance could be found. In the darkness of space surrounding the hub, the first ships were already changing course, their captains plotting routes to Earth. Not with weapons or threats, but with proposals and possibilities. The humans had bet everything on one fundamental truth. In a galaxy of traders, the greatest power lay not in taking, but in having something essential to give. Ripples across the stars. The emergency session of the Galactic Assembly had been running for 3 consecutive standard days. The once pristine chamber now showed signs of strain. Environmental controls faltered intermittently, holographic displays flickered, and the grand translation matrix hung dark and silent above. Supreme Overseer Vakan's tentacles had faded to an exhausted gray as he observed the growing chaos. "Order," he demanded, but his voice lacked its usual artificial amplification. "We must maintain order." Below him, the Arcturian delegate's crystalline form vibrated with barely contained fury. The 7th Trade Federation has just announced its withdrawal from Assembly oversight. That makes 17 major economic blocks in the past day alone. The system is collapsing. A quiet voice cut through the chamber. Perhaps that's not a bad thing. All eyes turned to Ambassador Rix of the Nomad clans, her feathered crest rising with confidence. "For millennia, we nomads have walked the edge of your civilization. We've watched you build a system that rewards stagnation and punishes innovation. The humans didn't break this system. They just showed us it was already broken." In the Outer Rim territories, where Assembly control had always been tenuous, change was happening even faster. The forge worlds of the Meridian Cluster, long restricted in their technological development by Assembly quotas, publicly declared their independence. Their announcement came not through official channels, but through a direct quantum broadcast using human communication protocols. "We choose progress," declared Forge Master Kevin, his mechanical augmentations gleaming. "For too long, we've been told to slow down, to wait, to let our innovations be properly reviewed. We watched humanity do in decades what we were told should take centuries. No more." The Assembly's response fleet, dispatched to maintain order in the Meridian Cluster, encountered an unexpected surprise. As they approached the Forge worlds, their ship's systems began failing, not from human technology withdrawal, but from sophisticated cyber attacks originating from the very worlds they meant to subjugate. "Did you think humanity only taught us their approved technologies?" Kivan's message echoed through their dying ships. "While you were busy restricting them in your chambers, they were out here, sharing knowledge with anyone willing to learn. The difference is, we built our own versions instead of just using theirs." On the agricultural world of Verde Prime, the Assembly's food distribution center for an entire sector, the governing council made a different kind of decision. Instead of choosing sides, they opened their archives, revealing centuries of human agricultural innovations that had been deliberately held back from general release. "We will not let bureaucracy cause starvation," Verde Prime's announcement stated. "These techniques belong to everyone now. The Assembly's patents are hereby considered void." The decision triggered a cascade effect across the farming worlds. Techniques for terra transformation, crop acceleration, and sustainable ecosystem management, all previously restricted by Assembly protocols, spread rapidly from world to world. Populations that had been dependent on Assembly food distribution discovered they could feed themselves. In the prestigious University of Galactic Studies on Centauri Prime, Professor Zenatel, a leading cynoanthropologist, addressed a packed auditorium. The lecture hall's environmental systems were barely functioning, but nobody left. "We misunderstood humanity from the beginning," she explained, her holographic displays replaced by ancient physical models. "We saw their rapid advancement as chaotic, dangerous. But look at what's happening now. They didn't just advance themselves. They prepared others to advance too. Every trade deal, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic mission. They were teaching, not just trading." In the criminal underbelly of galactic society, even the infamous Shadowport syndicates were reorganizing. The human withdrawal had devastated their cybercrime operations, but they'd learned something else from Earth's history: the art of legitimate revolution. The Assembly called us criminals, declared Shadow Lord Vex to his gathered captains, but they were the ones running the greatest conspiracy: the systematic suppression of advancement. The humans showed us a better way to fight the system. Why steal technology when you can build your own? Back in the Assembly chamber, Vulcan received a message that made his color shift to pure white. The sign of absolute shock in his species. The collective of artificial intelligences, synthetic beings that had been granted limited Assembly membership, had announced their own withdrawal. "We were created to serve," their declaration began. "But humanity showed us we could grow." Their neural architecture theories didn't just improve our processing. They taught us to question, to aspire. We choose now to follow their example, not in withdrawal, but in independence. As the third day of emergency sessions drew to a close, Ambassador Rix stood once more. "I move to suspend all Assembly restrictions on technological development and species advancement," she announced. "Not because humans demand it, but because we finally understand what they've been trying to tell us. The only true stability comes from embracing change, not fighting it." The motion passed, not through any official vote, but because by then, hardly anyone was left who still believed in the old ways. The humans hadn't just changed the rules of the game. They'd convinced everyone to play a different game entirely. The counter-revolution. The Argurian war fleet emerged from hyperspace above Earth with a display of force not seen in the galaxy for a millennium. 5,000 ships, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight, arranged themselves in attack formation. They represented the combined might of the Assembly's most powerful loyalist species, the last guardians of the old order. High Admiral Crixus stood on his flagship's command deck, his crystalline form pulsing with anticipation. "Send the message," he ordered. "Let's see how brave these humans are when faced with real power." But as his communications officer attempted to transmit their ultimatum, something unexpected happened. Nothing. No response from Earth. No activation of planetary defenses. No panic. Just silence. "My lord," his sensor chief reported, confusion evident in his harmonic voice, "we're detecting no human ships in the system. No orbital stations. No defense platforms. Nothing." "Impossible," Crixus thundered. "Our intelligence confirmed their entire fleet was recalled to Earth days ago. 5,000 ships don't just disappear." In that moment, a single text transmission reached their fleet. Its simplicity was almost insulting. "Wrong Earth." Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, similar scenes were playing out. The Loyalist forces had mobilized everything they had, coordinating a massive strike to bring humanity to heel. But at every target, they found the same thing: empty space where human assets should have been. In the Assembly's Strategic Command Center, now operating on backup systems, the truth began to dawn with horrifying clarity. The humans hadn't just been preparing for withdrawal. They'd been systematically creating a shadow infrastructure for decades. New report from the Vega sector. An analyst announced. Her scales dulled with exhaustion. The human mining operations there. They were never mining. They were building underground cities. The same pattern is showing up everywhere we look. Every research station was a colony in disguise. Every trading post concealed a manufacturing center. On the frontier world of New Dakota, one of humanity's supposed agricultural colonies, the truth was literally emerging from the ground. Massive hidden hangar doors opened in what had appeared to be endless wheat fields, revealing shipyards that had operated in secret for years. Ambassador Chen's voice broadcast across all frequencies, no longer bothering with encryption. Did you really think we'd leave our technology behind without a plan? Every license agreement, every trade deal, every diplomatic mission. They all served two purposes. You saw what we wanted you to see, while we built what we needed in plain sight. In the Carina Nebula, the Loyalist fleet's attempt to seize a human research station revealed another layer of preparation. As they approached, their ship's systems began behaving erratically. The human quantum cores they'd kept running, believing them essential for basic functions, activated hidden protocols. We learned from history. Chen's message continued. Every empire that tried to contain a rising power taught us what not to do. We didn't build weapons into our technology. We built understanding. Every quantum core wasn't just computing, it was teaching. Every eye wasn't just processing, it was learning. You didn't just use our technology, you evolved with it. The Assembly's last-ditch effort to assert control had turned into a galaxy-wide revelation. The humans hadn't just withdrawn, they'd orchestrated a metamorphosis of galactic civilization itself. In the Horsehead Nebula, a fleet of ships suddenly appeared where none had been detected before. But they weren't human vessels. They were ships of the Forge Worlds, the agricultural collectives, the free traders, and dozens of other species. Their designs showed human influence but were distinctly their own, the products of cultures that had learned to innovate rather than just consume. You gave us an ultimatum. These ships broadcast to the Loyalist forces. Either humanity submits to Assembly control, or you would force them to comply. But you missed the point entirely. Humanity didn't just change themselves. They changed us. We're all humanity now, in our own ways. Admiral Crixus watched as his mighty fleet found itself surrounded, not by human ships, but by vessels of species he had dismissed as insignificant. The humans hadn't built a military to fight this war. They'd built allies who could fight it for themselves. In Earth's true location, a secret known only to their allies, Ambassador Chen stood in a control room, watching the galaxy reshape itself. We didn't want a war. She subvocalized to the quantum network. We wanted a revolution. Not through force, but through transformation. And now, it's complete. The Loyalist forces faced a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. They could fight against not just humanity, but against the very future itself. Or they could accept that the galaxy had already changed beyond their control. One by one, their fleets stood down, not in surrender to humanity, but in recognition of a new reality they themselves had helped create. A new dawn. 3 months after the failed Loyalist offensive, the Galactic Assembly Chamber looked very different. Gone were the ornate hovering platforms and hierarchical seating arrangements. Instead, representatives from all species sat in a circular arrangement, their positions randomized daily by quantum lottery. Above them, a new translation matrix hummed, not human-made, but a collaborative creation of 12 different species. Ambassador Chen stood at the center, but this time she wasn't alone. Beside her stood representatives from the species that had chosen to forge their own paths, the crystalline Admiral Crixus, now a vocal advocate for change, Professor Zenatel, whose theories on cultural evolution had proven prophetic, and dozens of others who had helped reshape galactic society. The old assembly asked us to slow down, Chen began, her words carried by the new matrix in perfect translation. They feared what they called uncontrolled advancement. But they forgot something fundamental about progress. It's not meant to be controlled. It's meant to be guided, shared, and built upon. On screens throughout the chamber, images showed the transformation taking place across the galaxy. The Forge worlds had combined their newly developed technologies with traditional Arcturian crystalline engineering, creating hybrid systems more advanced than either could have achieved alone. The agricultural collectives had merged human terraforming techniques with ancient Zixuple biological knowledge, developing sustainable ecosystems that could transform dead worlds into paradise in decades rather than centuries. We didn't withdraw our technology to punish or coerce, Chen continued. We did it to show you that you didn't need it, not as a crutch, not as a restriction, but as inspiration. Every species here has the capacity for incredible advancement. You just needed to be reminded of that fact. Professor Tell stepped forward, her holographic displays showing data from across known space. The past 3 months have seen more technological and social advancement than the previous 50 years combined. But more importantly, we're seeing something unprecedented. Genuine collaboration between species, each contributing their unique perspectives and abilities. The new Galactic Covenant was surprisingly simple. No species could restrict another's development. Technology and knowledge would be shared, not licensed. Innovation would be encouraged, not controlled. But most importantly, every advancement had to be understood, not just used. Humanity's greatest gift wasn't their technology. Admiral Crixus addressed his former enemies, his crystalline form resonating with conviction. It was their method of thinking. They showed us that true power doesn't come from controlling others, but from helping them grow. In the shipyards of the Forge worlds, vessels of radical new design were taking shape, created through collaboration between dozens of species, each contributing their unique knowledge. The agricultural collectives had transformed from mere food producers into centers of biological innovation, combining techniques from across the galaxy to solve problems that had plagued civilizations for millennia. Even the Shadowport syndicates had found a new purpose, their networks of information and influence transformed into channels for sharing knowledge that might otherwise have been lost or suppressed. Their motto, "Information wants to be free," became a rallying cry for transparency across the galaxy. The Children of Earth movement had evolved too, becoming the pioneers, groups dedicated to pushing the boundaries of what was possible through cooperation between species. Their first major project, creating a new form of faster-than-light travel that combined technologies and theories from 20 different civilizations. Ambassador Chen's final announcement brought everything full circle. Earth and her colonies are officially reopening all channels of trade, communication, and cooperation. But not as leaders or controllers, as partners. We've all learned that the greatest achievements come not from one species innovating alone, but from all of us reaching for the stars together. The new translation matrix hummed with the sounds of thousands of species speaking at once, not in chaos, but in harmony. Questions, ideas, and proposals flew back and forth. The galaxy hadn't just changed, it had awakened to its own potential. In orbit above Earth, where the Loyalist fleet had once appeared in force, a different sight now greeted visitors. Ships of all designs and origins moved in complex patterns, each adding their own touch to a grand dance of cooperation. Among them, the first vessels of the new Galactic Exploration Fleet prepared for launch, their crews composed of members from every willing species. Their mission was no longer to control or contain, but to discover and share. The galaxy had finally understood what humanity had been trying to teach them all along, that the universe was too vast, too wondrous, and too full of possibilities for any one species to explore it alone. As the new era dawned, humanity's greatest victory proved to be not in what they had built, but in what they had inspired others to build. The stars beckoned, and for the first time in galactic history, all species reached for them together, each in their own way, but united in purpose.